One thing I hear a lot of is people fearing losing their athleticism, of becoming slow, sluggish and stiff as they age, as they become a parent, if they pick up an injury playing their sport, or when they retire from their sport altogether. They fear being considered to be past their prime. And this is something that happened to me, but personally now, I'm on a mission to maintain my athleticism for as long as possible, now that I'm into my 30s, now that I've become a dad, and that I've retired from playing rugby. It is normal for life to throw things at us, both good and bad, that will disrupt our training for an extended period of time. And in this video, I'm going to tell you 3 key things that helped me get my athletic ability back to a level that is the same as when I was in my mid-20s playing rugby. Now for me, the 2 key things that led to a decline in my athletic ability was, number 1, retiring from playing rugby, because this meant that my training, it didn't really have a focus, it didn't have a focal point or a main target to work towards. And so I just went through this period where it was sort of flat, it was just maintaining, there wasn't really any drive to improve in anything. And then not long after that, I became a dad, which is obviously a beautiful thing, but from a training point of view, being a parent is a bit of a nightmare. So I spent a lot of time looking like this, like asleep on the sofa. It disrupts your sleep, your recovery, and you can't train as much or as often as you'd like. And when you do train, the intensity is quite low. So I went through a good few months where my training was really disrupted, and I started to feel all those things, started to feel like I wasn't athletic anymore. My strength really decreased, my speed and power decreased. But in this video, like I said, I'm going to take you through 3 key things that really helped me get that athletic ability back. The first thing to consider within this, though, is patience is bitter, but its fruit is sweet. This isn't like a 2-week fix. You're not going to be able to just walk back into the gym, do 2 weeks of consistent training and be back to where you were. It takes a period of time, depending on how long your training has been disrupted for, how long you felt like this. It takes time to build back there. But you can do it with the right steps and using the right methods, and that's what I'm going to tell you about in this video. Now, the first thing I want you to think about considering implementing to regain your athletic ability is reintroducing plyometrics and power work into your training. Plyometrics for me is the bridge between the weight room and heavy lifting and what we do on the field of play or in our everyday athletic movements. Now, a lot of the people I work with are parents who are either still playing a sport or they've retired from playing a sport and they've taken up something like running or high rocks. If you're one of the people who are sort of jumping on the high rocks craze, which is great, or you've taken up running, you absolutely should be doing plyometrics in your training. And the reason is, athleticism is a combination of force production and movement quality, which includes speed of movement. And plyometrics are one of the best ways of training this. They're as close to sort of sprint type activities that we can do in the weight room with very minimal equipment in a really efficient way. They train the nervous system in a very different way to what heavy lifts do. And also they train the tendon to be very efficient in quick movements and high impact movements, which are going to feature in running and in high rocks or in any sport that you play. So plyometrics absolutely should be in there. And also power works, where we're moving explosively against resistance, is a great way for helping you improve your movement quality and feel athletic again. Now, if you're thinking you're going to have to completely rewrite your sessions in order to introduce this, please don't. You just need a couple of exercises in your session, ideally after the warm-up and before you start your heavy lifts, to get a great benefit and adaptation from this type of work. So if we were going to do this, what I would do is take a look at your session. And like I say, at the end of your warm-up, I'd probably try and implement 2 exercises per session. One being a plyometric exercise, ideally fast, body weight and repeatable. And then 1 loaded power exercise. So it might be in one session we're going to utilize pogo jumps, which are a brilliant exercise for anyone doing any sort of running or any impact-based activity. In another session, we might have some broad jumps or repeated broad jumps if you're a little bit more advanced, particularly if you're doing high rocks. That's going to be a good primer there. And then also we might introduce something like a box jump or ideally a drop jump. So we've got a fast ground contact, but we've got some impact involved because we're stepping off a box. We've got to absorb that impact and redistribute that power into an upward jump. For loaded power, so for power work, loaded jumps are great. They're a really good way of introducing that. So it might be a loaded counter movement jump. We can also do med ball throws. So med ball slams, med ball overhead throws are great. If you're going to do an upper body session or bench press is going to feature in that session, I would put in some med ball chest throws at the start as that sort of priming exercise. All these exercises are going to fire up the nervous system in a really great way. And if you do these med ball chest passes before you bench, you might be surprised at how good your bench feels after that. So getting these types of exercises back into our sessions, because heavy lifting is great. And like I said, it was really easy for me to just go back into the gym and start heavy lifting again. But these plyos and explosive strength are really what helped me feel that athletic ability again and really feel like it was starting to come back. Now the next thing is to train through range, because chasing PBs is great, but if we're only strong in one plane of movement and we're stiff everywhere else, or we lack strength through different planes of movement, then you're going to really struggle to feel athletic again. Now, when we go to the gym, we tend to think of chasing PBs in stuff like squats, deadlifts, bench press, or we think of sort of bodybuilding type movements. And a lot of these movements are in what we call the sagittal plane. But there are three planes of movement. There is the sagittal plane, which is that sort of up and down, forward and back type motion that we'd see during a squat or a deadlift. There is the frontal plane, which is going to involve sort of movements coming out to the side, so like a lateral raise would be a sort of typical example of movement through the frontal plane. And then the transverse plane of movement, which is our more rotation movements. It's important that we have all three of these movements. Now, getting the sagittal plane in is usually absolutely no problem for most people, but training through the frontal and the transverse plane features a lot less in people's programs, and then they wonder why they feel a bit stiff through their hips, why their back feels stiff, why they've not got much range of movement, because we need to load through large ranges of motion in order to stop feeling stiff. Yes, your static stretches and your mobility drills are great, but they're not really going to cut it if we want long lasting change. So improving joint range of movement is done very well under loads, and we need to get into these positions to unlock that range of movement. If we can do these exercises, so something through the frontal plane, for example, I really like is called a landmine lateral sway. And this is great for opening up the hips, it's great for improving adductor range of movement, and it's a very good strength exercise in itself. You've also got stuff like landmine rotations, which is going to be very effective through the transverse plane. We can include these types of movements in our sessions alongside our typical sagittal plane strength movements, then we're going to feel much better in terms of how we move. We're going to be able to unlock these sort of stiff joints and get much more range of movement through them. And in general, that's going to improve our athleticism no end. You'll probably find you get injured a little bit less, and you might find some of those lifts, like your squat, for example, which require good hip range of movement, suddenly just start to feel a bit better and start to feel a bit stronger. And then last but not least, and this is the one that a lot of people don't want to hear, follow a structured, repeatable training system. It's really stereotypical of people to say that the best training plan is the one that you can stick to. But if you're coming back from a period of detraining, then this matters even more. And it matters anyway, but it matters even more than you think in this situation. If you're a busy parent, for example, or you're an athlete playing a sport for that matter, following a 6-week body part split where you update every 3 to 6 weeks is not going to give you the lasting adaptation, the exposure to those movements and those weights to get the improvement that you're looking for. You're better sticking to smaller variations, so less change within your program, over a 8 to 12 week period to really start feeling the benefits and adaptations, because everything we feel in that early stage when we come back to a training program, we often feel a bit of an increase in those first few weeks. We'll have a couple of weeks where we feel fatigued, and then all of a sudden we'll get a bit of change and we'll start to feel good. There's basically just your nervous system getting used to moving in that way again, to using those sorts of loads again. If we want actual lasting change, we have to push past that period and then keep getting those small incremental increases and improvements. And that's where we get lasting adaptation, lasting change. What a lot of people do is they'll improve after 4 weeks and then try and change their training program to really push them forward. But actually just going gradually with progressive overload on similar movements, similar weights, is going to be potentially a better way of doing that, because you're going to get more adaptation and more change. And one thing that I always say to people is tweak, don't throw the program out and completely start again. Just small tweaks, small variations in volume and intensity. You can change certain movements to freshen things up, to get moving through a slightly different range of movement, but we want to keep a lot of our exercise the same. So typically, if we've done a 6-week block with someone, I'm probably only going to change, if they've got, say, 7 or 8 exercises in the program, probably going to change 2 or 3 of those exercises, unless it's an athlete with a really specific time scale that they've got to achieve something in, then I'm not going to make a huge amount of changes. The best athletes do the basics really, really well. We go on Instagram, we see people, doing all sorts of fancy things of these really complicated programs and really complicated exercise. But if you go and watch the best athletes in the world, they have key staples within their program and they stay in their program for almost the entire year. They do the basics very, very well. They hit the foundational movements, they progressively overload those movements, and they use just subtle variations of those movements as well to just put the emphasis into slightly different areas. And they're not in the gym all the time. They're not in the gym 6 days a week. They're playing their sport, they're getting good at it, and they're going to the gym maybe 2 or 3 times a week. And that's what we do a lot with the parents in our program, because a parent can't spend 6 days in the gym a week. They're not going to be able to maintain that program. If they miss a session, then it's going to be a week before they hit certain muscle groups or certain movements. So we use 3 full body sessions that allow you to hit all the key muscle groups multiple times, and if a session gets missed or has to be moved, it's not as much of a hit. They'll then focus on their chosen activity of running, whether it be high rocks prep, or we have some CrossFitters or athletes who play sports. That will then be their focus for the rest of the time. So you don't need 6-day-a-week body splits. You just need a repeatable system that you can stick to, because that is the best training plan for you, and the same goes for nutrition as well. So hopefully that video has been helpful. Hopefully you've picked up 3 key tips that you can implement quite easily within your training program. If you feel like you need further help, or you want more information, or you just want to ask some questions, just head over to my Instagram channel, which is in the description below this video. Message me with your question, or just message me the word parent. I'll get back to you and we'll see if we can help you out. Thank you guys, and I'll see you on the next one.